Now, NDC minority member on Parliamentary Defense and Interior Committee, Peter Tobu, has warned that his side will fiercely resist any attempt to remove Dr. George Dampare as the Inspector General of the Police Service. His comment follows the circulation of an audio set to reveal a plot to kick Dr. Dampare out to enable the MPP rig next year's elections. Peter Tobu warns that such action could seriously put the Fourth Republic at peril. The tape does not identify any person by name, but the people involved include a top police officer and a senior member of the governing MPP. We will hear from Mr. Tobu shortly. Per our editorial policy, we're unable to play the tape as we have not independently verified it, but we can tell you what we hear in the parliamentary. Correspondent Kweku Asante joins me from Parliament, where the issue is receiving some attention. Kweku, grateful for joining us. First, what do you pick up from the audio?
This audio has some very disturbing sounds. There are those who are on a tape saying that the Inspector General of Police is a member of the NDC and that he is thwarting certain efforts by the government to do certain things, of course, starting from their Senate by-election. There's a claim that if the IGP, Dr. George Dampare, remains at post by the 2024 election, he will scuttle government's efforts to, quote-unquote, rig the election. And so he must be changed, removed, so that a new person who can aid government's efforts to do all this can be brought in. And these are the comments that are captured in that viral audio. It is a lengthy one. It's almost an hour, and there are a lot of allegations on it against the IGP about how he's not allowing the government have their way in doing a number of things. And so far, we have not been able to independently verify the source or the veracity of the things that have been said in that tape or the authenticity of it.
How has Parliament been reacting to this particular tape?
There's been a number of comments that have come in so far. We've heard from Peter Lantini Tobu, who first says that his side will resist any attempt to remove the IGP. Of course, he concedes that the president appoints the IGP and may remove him based on certain satisfactory circumstances and conditions, but he does not believe that any circumstance so far warrants that. And if anything of that sort is supposed to happen, then someone trying to have their way and do what happened in the Ayawaso West by-election, if anything of that sort is supposed to happen, his side will resist it.
There's only one position in the whole Ghana Police Service called the IGP's position. And you have over 30-something, 40-something, 50-something thousand police officers. So if you have about 20 commissioners, okay, each of them believe that I can become an IGP. So the dream to become IGP is a motivation to drive them into all kinds of things. So the fact that you become IGP, don't go sleeping thinking that the people who are supporting you, they all love you so much. They are supporting you believing that you will leave very soon for them to occupy the same position. So your own supporters can become your enemies. So it's a normal thing, lobbying behind the scene, wanting to get to the apex of the organization that you join. That is always a dream for every police officer. So the fact that people will lobby to get that position is not a bad thing. But when you are becoming so dirty in your approach, it becomes unprofessional. And you are totally disqualified to even catch the eye of the president.
Finally, Honorable, in the lead up to 2024 election, a lot has been said. Do you believe that, you've said so far that the IGP is doing a good job. Do you believe that there may be a plot within the government itself to remove the IGP? Because some have said he will not allow plans to rig any election. Do you believe that anything of that sort could be happening?
Well, it's not a matter of believing, but it's a matter of saying that whoever thinks that way is undemocratic in the brain. Because if somebody thinks that is the Ayawaso West bygone election type of violence that can lead the MPP to break the 8, then it means that we don't want the Fourth Republic. Because anything like Ayawaso West wagon violence, if anything like that surfaces in the 2024 elections, our democracy problem will be gone. Nobody will sit and take that. Let the police do a professional job, let the politicians do professional politics, and let Ghana have a future. That is all I can say.
Mr. Tobu is someone who has been in the service. What was his reaction to the tape when he first heard it? I mean, was it that it could be a possible creation by something else, or he believed that this could be a reality?
He has concerns that this might have been edited, this might have been an artificial intelligence generated sound that we have heard so far. But of course, he gives a lot of credence to the idea that this is something that can possibly happen. But he has concerns. He wants people to tarry slowly. He's asking the IGP to ignore it. But he has concerns that this may have been AI generated. Let's listen to him.
I've listened to the audio, and it is quite strange. No commissioner worth his salt will do this. I'm tempted to believe that it's that application of AI that has generated the voice and have done such a thing. It is dastardly, it is shameful, because if you want to lobby to be appointed of IGP, that is the wrong way, because what you are doing, if it is true, if the president even remove Dr. George Akuffo Dampare and appoint whoever is lobbying so badly for it, we will paint you as an MPP surrogate, and you cannot perform as an IGP. From a professional background, I think that is an AI-generated something just to deceive the public. And the president will not listen to this kind of thing. So let's just throw it to the dustbin. It's not something that we should try to give it so much publicity. No commissioner worth his salt would do that. And even if there is any commissioner who has done this, then that such a person should never even get closer to the office of the IGP.
But if there is any possibility that this may be true, would you want some form of investigation to be commissioned into it to unravel the face behind this audio?
Well, this is a national security matter. If the state thinks that such a thing can affect the security of the state, fine. But for me, if you ask me, I will tell you, let's gloss over it. Let it slide. Let Dr. George Akuffo Dampare have a freedom to work. And let's assure him that, listen, these things will not break you down. You are doing a good job for this country, and all we have to do is to encourage you to perform. When your time comes and you are gone, they can appoint another IGP. But if this is how we remove IGPs, it means that we don't want our democracy to stay. We will break down the police service and destroy our democracy. That audio that I've listened to, if it is true, it is sad. And I will be wondering where such a commissioner was trained.
Kweku, we understand the Interior Minister has been reacting to this.
Yes, we did caught up with him in Parliament today. His first instinct was to say that the tape must be ignored, but he says that there is no plot, there is no attempt to remove the IGP. He gives him plaudits, says he's doing so well in the office, and that the government or the NPP is not seeking to remove him. Let's listen to Interior Minister Ambrose Derry.
I think that you should ignore it with the contempt that it deserves. There is no plot to remove anybody. I don't know about anything. As far as I'm concerned, he's doing a good job.
And will you investigate if there is a so-called tape of a certain senior police officer and MPP government officials trying to plot anything of the sort?
Well, I serve my president and I'll do what is policy to bring the development of this country. I'm not sure I want to get involved in any investigation or thing, except that they relate to crime. Then we'll do that. But I think that so far, I think we are doing well. As far as I'm concerned, what the president of this country made clear, right back to the manifesto of the election before the first time, was that there was a fear syndrome in Ghana, and part of the fear syndrome was that people thought that we had a security system that was not, across board, we favored a particular class of people in office who were too big to be touched, and therefore the tenet of rule of law, that we are equal before the law, was not tenable. And also we had a professionalism at the time that we were not training people adequately, we were not equipping them, and that's what we sought out to deal with. And therefore, as far as I'm concerned, we've made a lot of progress along that line. And we've had a police system now that is professional, that will arrest you whether you are MP, whether you are minister. When you commit an offense, you are arrested and you are dealt with. And above all, they will arrest you if you are a policeman or policewoman. They will deal with you. And now, under this dispensation, you realize that we've made the right to demonstrate, a real right. Tapes and whatever you have will only be useful if they relate to crime. But otherwise, we don't know. But having made that positive determination that this is criminal or not.
Will you take a closer look?
A closer look at what?
At the tape. and then come to a firm conclusion as to whether there's something to pursue.
Do you have something that you have seen that you want to ask me? Then ask
No,
me.
we've heard, for instance, they talk about attempts to tamper with the outcome of the 2024 elections.
That government is planning because of that, you want to take.
Please. Let me make it absolutely clear that this government is not going to tamper with 2024 election.
So that's Minister of Interior there. We've been joined on this particular conversation by Adib Sani, who is a security analyst. Adib, grateful to you for joining us. What was your first reaction when you heard about this tape? Have you listened to it anyway?
Absolutely. It sounds very convincing. It doesn't sound like AI or deepfake. But that notwithstanding, as a security person who wears a security lens, when I do such analysis, it is imperative that I exercise some level of circumspection, because we now have such advancement in technology. I can record your voice, play it to the machine, and the machine would replicate it and make it sound like you. Even your video, I can, with that Joy News background, a deep fake of you. If you watch it on the face value, there's no way you'll be able to tell it's true or not. And the unfortunate thing, it has created such a convenient avenue for people to easily give excuses. They do it, and immediately it comes out, they say it's fake. And it's so convenient to do so. And I'm also very disappointed by the Minister for the Interior about his position on this issue. You see, there's a popular saying that the little things matter. What you use is a bath without a tap. And we are so accustomed to brushing off issues. What I would have expected, government, and I'm happy your journalists and other journalists kept buttressing and asking the same question. If we were a very serious country, what would have been commissioned is an investigation immediately to ascertain the authenticity. And now we have advanced softwares that you'll be able to tell easily, within minutes, whether what you are listening to is a deep fake or not. Then the necessary investigation would follow. Because we are talking about perceptions here already. Everywhere. There are people talking about it, the bickering. It's not the first time I'm hearing about the intention of some people to get rid of the, IGP. All right? But when issues of this nature mix the rounds, then those who are very neck deep in the politics start having or even harboring such, perceptions about people wanting to rig the process, and the next minute we are matching you boot to boot, and it's a catalyst for disaster. So let us not rubbish this. I think there is the need for an impartial investigation to go into this so we are able to know the truth and to restore some level of confidence amongst the electorate so far as our politics is concerned. Because next year's election, I must say, is going to be dicey. Okay.
So, in this case, how do we progress from here? We can't just listen and let it go. How do we move on?
An investigation would have to be done. The things I've heard on the tape is dastardly, it is despicable, it is very inconsistent with our democratic values. We have chalked a lot of successes since the inception of the Fourth Republic. In fact, we are one of the few countries that hasn't suffered a civil war before. We don't have any active insurgency in any part of the country. We have never been attacked by terrorists before. We've had the incumbent handing over power to the opposition without asking questions. We need to consolidate that democracy. And one of the ways that can happen is through the building of confidence. Because once people start having these misconceptions and these suspicions, some of them very unfounded, then it becomes, a matter of grave concern, especially for those of us within the security space. So we cannot afford to rubbish this. An investigation has to be carried out. In fact, there are so many softwares you can use to know and even compare voices to be sure that this voice is from that person and it's not a deep fake. etc. So we cannot afford to let it slide like other issues, it has happened with other issues. Okay, we need to consolidate the democracy, and one of the ways to achieve that is through accountability.
What sort of impact is this likely to have on the police administration itself? Now, the IGP probably has heard this. He will be looking over his shoulder. So, from how you understand these issues, what's going to happen now? What impact will it have?
Well, I must say, when the IGP was first appointed, I'm one of the persons who spoke highly of the appointment based on his track record, what he has achieved in the past. In fact, when you even go on Wikipedia, and Google the IGP, I'm one of those persons cited. So from day one, I have had, a lot of confidence in him. He has also proven beyond reasonable doubt that he's up to the task. Recently, there was a video of a Fulani girl who was manhandled. She was assaulted. And I spoke about it in the media. He called me. He quickly arranged a meeting between myself and him and the leaders of the Fulani community. So they get to tell their people to exercise restraint and not to take matters into their own hands because of the video. And guess what? We were on phone with the IGP up until midnight just to make sure that those persons were arrested. And by 3 a.m., they were arrested. By 5 a.m., he called me, Adi, we've gotten them. So that should tell you, he goes down to the ground. I even saw Nigerian media talking highly of him. When he met the school kids, he went down, he spoke with them, he led them to school. They were like, in Nigeria, you can't see this. You can't see the IGP out there. So he has proven that he's up to the task. Please, let the man do his work. Okay?
So yes, he will be allowed to do his work, but from this tape, possibly, some peace or unity in the administration will be ruffled. Wouldn't there be anything like that? Wouldn't he now start to be looking over his shoulders to say, who's coming after me?
Well, the IGP Dampare, I know, is very focused. I'm not a spokesperson, but based on my relationship with him, I'm not sure that it's something that is going to make him worried because Ghanaians are the judge. We know what work he's done in the past and what he's capable of doing going into next year's election. The Asin North is a test case. Some of us were worried that there could be violence, but when you look at the security arrangements put in place, I think he did a great job. So I don't think it's going to affect the way he does his job. My only concern is this tape consolidating or reaffirming, so to speak, people's existing belief about some people wanting to rig the process. We've heard it a number of times. Talking about breaking the 8 and how some will do whatever it is to break the 8. We're talking about some in opposition, whatever it will do, they will do for them to come to power, they will also do it and all that. So we are at a crossroad. Okay, so issues like this matter because it resonates with the people. Okay, and once they begin thinking that my opponent is up to something, then they might also take matters into their own hands, and that could be, cataclysmic to our democracy.
Okay. Now, Mukhtar Momuni is also joining us on this. He is someone with expertise in security as well. Grateful to you, sir, for joining us. Now, Adib says that this is a serious matter that must be looked at. I'm sure you have listened to the tape as well. As a person, when you heard what were being said in there, how did it occur to you? How did it come to you as an individual?
Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your listeners and viewers. Yes, this, was surprising to me, but at the same time, this is not far-fetched. Okay. And in terms of the role of politicians and how they use, police officers or the police administration, especially in incumbent government, to their advantage when it comes to elections. And so for me, it wasn't entirely surprising that kind of conversation could happen. But I was more interested in which voices we were hearing, which voices were we listening to, what level of leadership is that, what kind of, what category, what weight do they have within the party to have these kinds of conversations. And that would lend credence, and that would determine the weight we place on this and in terms of the conversation that we are now having. But it wasn't entirely shocking to me that this kind of conversation could take place and that people could be scheming to use, the police administration to their advantage when it comes to elections.
Okay. I mean, how must this be handled such that it doesn't create problems for the service and for the country's security in general?
I think that we have to take it very seriously in the sense that can actually undermine, the processes that lead to the general elections because it allows people to begin to view and begin to see the security, steps and preparations that are put in place to see whether it is skewed towards a particular political party and to see whether, a particular political party has had influence in the way the processes are done. But at the same time, I would say we should not take this too serious in the sense that the IGP and his administration in the last couple of years have demonstrated that they are ready to do the job and they are ready to remain impartial, they are ready to remain independent. And this is something we have been calling for in the last several decades. We've been calling for a kind of independent police administration that can and should be allowed to do its job, independent of any political influence from, ruling government or opposition government. And what we have just witnessed in terms of the audio that we have listened to, we're just talking about, is a further demonstration of the IGP's commitment to be impartial, to do his job, irrespective of which political party is involved. And so for me, I don't think that we should be too worried about, the capacity of the IGP and his team to do an independent job away from the influence of any political party or the administration. We have seen in very recent times the last two by-elections that have been conducted, and I think both political parties, including all other actors, confirmed that this was done in a manner that we have always expected the police, to do when it comes to elections. So we should not be too worried about it, especially what the IGP and his team is capable of doing in the run-up to the election 2024.
But with what you just said, it then comes down to the appointment regime, how we appoint someone to the office of the IGP. Is that not what we should start with if we really want to give that independence to the office?
Well, for several years, we have been worried about the way the IGP or the police administration is constituted in terms of appointment of the IGP and the other commissioners and the entire leadership of the police administration. Because we believe that if we have an independent commission that takes charge of appointing and setting up, the leadership of the institution, we would be able to have an independent team that acts independently, that acts impartially. But at the same time, and that particular analysis leads to what, we variously quote Obama when we talked about, having strong institutions and not strong individuals. But we need to have strong individuals as well to be able to have strong institutions. So here we have an IGP Dampare, who was appointed by the president and who is at the direction and control of the president, technically in many ways. But at the same time, we have seen him act in a very, very determined and impartial and independent manner. And that tells you that irrespective of the appointing regime, we can still have institutions that can act independently if they are not afraid of losing their jobs. And I can tell you, from my interaction with the current IGP, he is somebody who is unafraid of, the administration or any political power in terms of, losing his job for doing the right things. And so I think that we have a good example now to show that we can be independent, we can have independent institutions, irrespective of who appoints the person in that place.
Well, but he is someone who doesn't fear to lose the job. But there will come some people, because in the past we've had discussions about, well, the IGPs are not behaving the way they have to because they fear that they can be fired. And isn't it now time for us to use this as a test case to say, let's take a look at it again, so that probably you won't have another Dampare. But you could have someone who's not like Dampare, but still can do the job without fear or favor because the way he or she is appointed is not left to someone's whims or caprice. There is a laid down procedure. Shouldn't that be the way we have to go?
Okay. So first of all, you need to ask the question: are all public servants and civil servants not to be? I mean, are they not supposed to be like Dampare? Are they not supposed to act in a manner that shows that they are unafraid of losing their job for doing the right thing? We have to come to a point where we have to build that courage to say that people who serve in that capacity, people who serve in government, whether they are appointed by the president or whatever body, they have to be ready to do the right thing and be willing to lose their job if it has to be that. But at the same time, yes, and I agree with you, we should have an independent body in terms of setting up, in terms of ensuring the independence and impartiality of an office like the IGP's office. Yes, we've talked about how do we ensure that the president's, role in appointing the IGP, it is only limited to just confirming, approving, after, for example, the IGP is vetted by Parliament and then, get the approval of the president. That way, it does not become the sole authority of the president to appoint an IGP, which is great. But in the meantime, whilst we are aiming at that, we need to encourage public servants to be willing to do the right thing, irrespective of what the cost is in terms of losing their jobs. That way, we will be able to build, the groundswell of, courage and the spirit that we need to build independent institutions.
Adib, let me come to you here. Mustn't we allow, because the police has structures, people move from one rank to the other, mustn't we just allow that to work so that there will be one person or the officers can rise from whatever rank they have till they become IGP and it's automatic? Nobody should come and say, I'm appointing you. But because of your rank, you rise to become the IGP. Shouldn't that be a perfect solution to this?
The president, of course, in consultation with the police council and the council of states, appoints the IGP.
Sure.
And that is done in many democracies across the world. Even in the US, for a police chief to be appointed to take charge of the city police, it is usually done by the mayor or the city council. They come together and appoint the police chief. In other countries where democracy is entrenched, it is the executive that appoints, the one, in charge of the police. I think it is largely because of It is because of a lot of factors. This issue has come up before. We've discussed it in the past. The need for some checks to be done. So security services don't have too much power invested in them because it makes you very vulnerable for coups, military takeovers, police takeovers, and the rest. So it is in recognizing that the 1992 Constitution really took that into consideration. So you would have the executive, which are usually civilians, taking charge, appointing the chiefs and keeping them in check and making sure that they don't do things beyond their powers. That is why for a state of emergency to be imposed, it has to go through that process, and it goes through the executive, it comes to parliament, etc. So you don't have the military or the police deciding that, hey, we want to restrict the movements of certain persons. But that doesn't stop the IGP or anyone appointed by the president from being fair, impartial, and professional in his approach. For example, when Donald Trump appointed John Bolton as the national security advisor, at the point, they had their differences with respect to the Iranian nuclear deal and, of course, Trump's open door approach to North Korea. And one day, John Bolton approached me and said, okay, Mr. President, you are going this direction, I am going that direction. It's been great working with you, and so I would like to tender in my resignation. That is true principles. That is professionalism. But people see their stomachs first before their principles or the institutions they represent. So that shouldn't prevent the IGP from doing his work.
All right. Now, we going forward, we need to identify the people on the tape, because we've heard Mr. Tobu who says that the police officer who is on the tape doesn't deserve to be close to the position he occupies. How do we identify the persons on the tape so that if any remedial measures could be taken, we take that?
That can only happen through an investigation. I would have expected that by now an investigation should start into it, because the content of the tape is quite disturbing. And it has destabilizing effects. It is incendiary. Hence, the need for us to look at it closely and not take it lightly. And it's only through that investigation we'll be able to tell, like my brother Mutar asked, who are the voices behind the tape? And once we are able to establish that, then we take matters to a different level. Okay. But for anyone to think that, this cannot be done by that person, that cannot be done by this, I think it's wrong, because we are human beings. You never know what anyone is thinking. Sometimes you are living with someone in the same room, you are on the same bed. The person might be an armed robber without you knowing. So for anyone to contend that, oh my God, I know him, he used to be a nice person, he can't be a killer. Meanwhile, in the end, the person ends up being a killer. So let us not be tempted to think that the police, once you are a commissioner, you are perfect. You don't make mistakes, or you never engage in any activity that is inconsistent with the values of the police service.
Interesting here. We have one political person, one police officer on this tape. Investigation can't help us unravel it. But like you said, by now, we should have heard of the institution of a committee to look at it. How long from now should this announcement be done? By who?
I don't think a committee should look at it. Usually they like drinking too much tea and they talk plenty, and in the end, nothing comes out of it. It's just a simple CID investigation. Okay. So we get to know who are behind it and whether they matter in the general scheme of things or not, because all of this is also aimed at boosting confidence in the process. And as a foreign policy and security person, I do know the importance of confidence in the electoral system as a prerequisite to make it clean, fair. For example, in 2007 in Kenya, there was an AU document that pointed to certain worrying factors with respect to people not trusting the process, not trusting the Independent National Electoral Commission. Nothing was done about it. In the end, there was chaos. In Ivory Coast, the same can be said. At the point when the Electoral Commissioner, they call them the courts, came out to announce the results, someone took the slip from them and tore it because he didn't trust the process. Okay, so we wouldn't want that to befall us. Perceptions is everything. Okay, we have to get Ghanaians to understand that, hey, nobody is up to anything untoward. Whatever it is, by the end of the day, in 2024, December 7th, whoever would be elected would be a true reflection of who you want to be the president. Okay, the one step towards realizing that is to ensure accountability and not simply brushing off serious matters.
Grateful, but Mukhtar, let me bring you in here. So both of you have said, well, this is not a big issue that we should be worried over. So can we go to sleep, and if nothing happens, we take it as, well, nothing really happened?
Well, we can't at the moment just conclude that nothing will happen and that we should leave it as it is. No, we need to investigate this, and we need to determine the voices that are in it. That will determine the weight we place on this kind of, talk that we are listening to. And that can establish whether we need to do further investigations or take any actions around it in terms of going forward into 2024 elections regarding the police administration. At the moment, like my brother Adib mentioned, confidence is very, very key. If anything that is aimed at, doing something like what we are listening to can undermine confidence in the processes that lead to the elections. And so we need to establish the veracity of these audios. We need to know who are involved in this. We need to determine the weight, how much do they matter in terms of weight in the party and in government, if at all they are. And that can lead us to what we do next about it. But the important thing is that we need to ensure that the processes involved in terms of the electoral processes, in terms of security, impartial, in a manner that is independent, and ensure that everybody feels confident about the process. And that kind of thing begins now.
Interesting. I've heard a member of parliament describe this as treasonable, and that we need to investigate it to arrive at that conclusion, or to understand what was the way out. If treason is brought in, then it means it's a serious matter. Are you looking forward to seeing the parliament intervene in this?
Well, this is quite far-fetched, but of course, these are politicians, so you heard it from the politician. They know the stakes that are involved here. Elections, there are high stakes involved. It can lead to change of power. The role of the police, they know. If you have ever ruled before, you know the capacity of the police administration, to make a difference in electoral outcomes. And so for any politician or group of people to seek to hatch a plan intended at, changing the leadership of the administration or using the leadership of the police administration to their advantage, their opponents would see this as either directly or indirectly attempt at staging a coup or attempt at subverting the will of the people of Ghana. Because if that happened successfully, it would have amounted to subverting the will of the people of Ghana, in that manner, people can describe it as, potential coup situation. But that is far-fetched. The important thing for us to do is establish the voices that we have listened to, who they are, how much, they matter in the party, and the possibility that they already have the capacity to do what they are talking about. And that can determine what we do next going forward regarding it. But the difficulty right now, for the government possibly could be that if they were intending at changing the IGP for any reason, now it becomes very complex and problematic because that would be played into this game. It would create the impression that is intended at, setting up a leadership to, act in a manner that is to the advantage of the ruling government. And so we wait to see what happens, especially in the coming days and weeks, what will come out of this particular tape.
Mukhtar Mumini, grateful to you, as well as Adib Sani. Both of them are security analysts, and grateful that they could join us on this discussion. You're still watching The Pulse here on the Joy News channel. We'll take a quick break. We have more for you here in this edition. Stay with us.